Christian parenting.
Hey Mama, I'm Pamela Hinkleman, certified empty nest coach, and you're listening to the Midlife Mama podcast. This show is for Christian moms navigating the empty nest, learning how to let go with grace, set healthy boundaries, reconnect in marriage, and step confidently into their God-given purpose. Each week, I'll coach you through this season with faith-filled encouragement, honest conversations, and practical tools that you can apply right away to your relationships and your life. If this episode encourages you, I'd be grateful if you leave a quick rating and review. It helps other moms find the support they need. You'll find the link in the show notes. And make sure you're following the podcast. And let's get started. Few things hurt quite like distance from your adult child. Whether communication feels strained, the relationship is fractured, or if you experience the devastating silence of estrangement, the grief can feel overwhelming. And so moms are left asking, what happened? What did I do wrong? Is there any hope for healing? My guest today is family estrangement and emotional healing expert, speaker, and creator, Tania Khazaal, who brings a unique perspective to this conversation because she's lived it from both sides. Tania was once the adult child who chose estrangement from her own mother, and today she helps families better understand the painful dynamics that can lead to disconnection and what can help create a pathway toward repair. In this conversation, we're talking about why adult children sometimes pull away, the mistakes hurting parents often make when trying to reconnect, and what emotional safety actually looks like, and how moms can take ownership where needed without drowning in shame. If this is part of your story, I want you to know you're not alone. Welcome, Tania.
Hey, thank you for the introduction, Pamela.
I'm so glad you're here. First of all, tell my listeners what you're up to today. What does your life look like?
Oh, that's a big question. Right now, to be honest with you, I'm really working on revamping my brand new community that actually allows what I call like an implementation and communication lab. So I found like communication is the one thing that nobody really teaches in relationships, but is the fundamental, most important thing. How do I express myself? How do I react? How do I do all of that? And so that's really what I'm working on right now, because honestly, the biggest transformation I've seen is when parents really understand how to approach in conversation things differently. Not just parents, relationships, marriages, everything. It improves their relationships drastically.
I love that. Okay, I want to start with, I think what makes you so unique and wonderful to be in this field is that you have been on the other side of estrangement. You have been the daughter who shut off relationship. Tell me about that. Tell me what your reconciliation looked like, and then how that led to what you do now.
Yeah, so you're right. I want to say 23 around, maybe 22, when I, in the name of healing, cut off my mom. And just like any other adult child, I had a lot of reasons that I thought were justified. I felt unseen and had a lot of emotional needs unmet. I felt unloved. I felt not wanted. I tried to seek love outside of myself. And a lot of my brokenness I can attribute to my childhood, right? And so it's not to say that none of it is true. It's just I got to a point where I was reading Joe Dispenza books when I was like 19, trying to understand how to reprogram my brain and what does that look like. And then I started to learn about emotional healing because it was such an important piece of my own personal healing. And then I just got to a point where I was like, I don't feel better. I'm angry. I'm unhealthy. I miss my dad. I miss my sister. I missed parts of my mom, even though I held the most resentment towards her. And so I would fight the thought of, I feel guilty, but no, it's healing. I feel guilty. No, it's my healing. And I was like, maybe there's something deep underlying that, underneath that guilt, that I need to pay attention to. Maybe this is not the answer. And so I opened up conversation again. But the most important thing is I had to also, alongside that, emotionally heal in a sense of, am I being fair to what the truth is? Or is it just my perception of what I interpreted based on what happened to me as a child? Yes. And that completely changed my mind, and where I introduced this 3-step framework into my own healing and what I do with many people. And it just completely changed my perspective of my mom. It allowed me to release the anger and the resentment, the frustration, and everything towards compassion and understanding, and actually even sadness.
Yeah.
And then when I realized that, and the emotional healing is such a big part of people's health and happiness, and then the relationships is equally as important, I naturally got into this work from my own healing journey. And I realized that I was very into health and I was speaking publicly a lot about health for so many years. And I realized that why is nobody talking about the emotional and the inner child and the relationship with the parents? Because that's the culprit of so many health issues. I could sit here and tell you the best diet and non-toxic living and all of this stuff. But if you're not dealing with what's happening emotionally and repairing relationships and expressing yourself and learning communication, then all of that only goes so far.
Yes, I love that. I hear what you're saying. You got to this place because of perception, and there were real hurts, right? You are not saying that adult children are not hurt. You are not saying that, right? And I think you are sometimes villainized because, yeah, you're villainized all the time because you're like, adult children are saying, I was hurt. We're not saying you weren't hurt. We're saying cutting off relationship is not the answer.
That's right. If a real abuse is not the culprit.
If real abuse is not the culprit.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're right. I get villainized a lot because it's a polarized topic, right? And the children are incredibly hurt and they're like, oh, you're victim shaming. You don't know what I went through. My mom was a narcissistic. And it's interesting because two things happen. One, someone really explains abuse. And I said, you're not the person I'm talking to. If there's real physical safety and abuse, you're not the person I'm talking to. And I make that clear. But then there's the other ones that are like, I was abused. My mom was narcissistic. My mom was toxic. You'll never know. And I asked them, what is your definition of abused? What is your definition of a narcissist? What is your definition of toxic? And they never answer because it's like, is she really toxic? Or is this just the emotional language that you've been taught to use because she doesn't do things and say things and react in certain ways that you want her to?
So how many years were you cut off from your family?
2 years.
2 years. So you eventually came to this understanding. So many moms in my audience are carrying deep heartbreak. I mean, I can't think of a heartache worse than this except to have a child who has actually died. But here you have a death, but the child is still living. So from your perspective, what are some of the most common reasons adult children choose estrangement?
First, I want to acknowledge what you're saying is because you're right. It's a different kind of grief where you can't mourn a relationship. You can't mourn a child because the child hasn't passed. So you're trying to make peace with the reality that should never be something a parent experiences. A parent never imagines their life where their child is gone from their life, but not in the physical sense. And I just think it's really mean in a lot of ways. And why I say the devil loves disconnecting the family. There's a lot of reasons, to be honest with you. The number one reason that I could say is children who are entitled, who are overgiven, overcompensated, and never had to really navigate too much of the hardships of life because they never grew the emotional resilience and the capacity to deal with harder conversations and tough situations. And so they learned avoidance because they don't know how to process it. Yeah. The second thing is I see a lot of is the in-law. The daughter-in-law comes in and then power shift estrangement settles in and then the son has to almost pick, it's like a loyalty bind, and he has to almost be like, okay, my new wife and my family are my priority, which they're actually right, it is. And the parents do have to take a step back. So it's a matter of the parent learning, wait, how do I still show up in this relationship where I'm not going to be cut off forever? I also see where single moms who had to sacrifice so much for their kids, and then the children saw their parent in straight survival. And that created an inadequacy within themselves where they were also surviving. And as they started to grow up and wanted to create that identity formation, they started to push away and resent their mother for the sacrifices that she had to endure. But because of those sacrifices, she didn't emotionally show up. She was surviving. She probably snapped a lot more than she wanted to. She was exhausted, all of this stuff. That obviously would naturally affect a child. It could be a parental alienation is a big one. Where there's a divorce and the ugliness, the one parent turned the other parent against each other, and then the child navigates that, where it's like now they built this hatred towards the other parent because they've got so much emotion and they're hearing what the parents say. So there's not really one reason. There's so many different reasons. I think the number one reason why it's happening is because it's becoming normalized. They're normalizing cutoff. So it's like whatever is happening to you. My mom was single. My parents went through a divorce. My dad was this. My mom was this. Whatever it is, it's now saying, my pain is a reason that I should have never gone through that pain. When it's a reality check, every family has a dysfunctional family in some way.
Exactly.
That's just the reality. And social media will make you think otherwise. TV will make you think otherwise. And that's, I think, the biggest reason why cutoff is happening now is not even just the actual unique situation, is that the emotional language is becoming so normalized that people are resulting in that.
Exactly. Exactly. Oh, there are so many ways we can go. Let's focus a little bit on this daughter-in-law situation and that loyalty shifts because in my coaching business, I meet with a lot of moms who have it shifted once their son got married. What can a mom do about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. The biggest thing that they can do is don't try to fight your side. Don't try to defend yourself. Don't try to explain yourself. Don't try to make the daughter-in-law look bad. None of that is all going to be used as a way to reinforce the narrative that's being built against you versus just saying, hey, I love you both. I wish you the best. I'm here for you. And always being that steady person that for sure outlasts that narrative that they've built. It doesn't stick around for very long. Sometimes it could be months, sometimes it can be years.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, as long as you're like that steady parent that's not, it's like you're fighting fire with fire. And because he's in a loyalty bind, he's going to pick his wife. That's his new family. That's just the reality. So the more you're fighting it, the more it's just going to create that resistance and the separation because he is going to choose this family. He's not going to say, okay, my mom is right, I'm going to leave my wife. It's not going to happen.
Right.
And so you have to say, I'm going to be steady. I have to accept the reality that I'm dealing with right now. How can I still keep showing up so that they don't have ammunition to use against me?
What I hear you saying is it's time for moms to become emotionally steady instead of being swept away in the, she's
my
so
God.
horrible. Like,
It's so important. The emotional steadiness is probably the one of the most important things that I teach parents is because, and that's where it's the most transformations. I can't even tell you the amount of testimonials I get all the time of I reconnected with my daughter, I reconnected with my son, we're talking again. And they all say pretty much the same thing. Not just, hey, your script word for word worked, which we have those, but it's like, I'm just responding differently. I'm approaching it differently. And I think that they feel it. And they're surprised by it. Like, they're like, oh, I'm used to you arguing or defending it or trying to say, look at me, I did the best that I can. There's just, that alone changes it. Because if you're, one of my favorite lines that I created myself is a child cannot come back to a mother who is at war with herself.
ooh, tell me about that. Describe
And
that.
so what that means is if you can't emotionally steady yourself because of your own internal emotional chaos, why would a child come? How? Not even why. How is a child going to come back to that when the reason that they're distancing is because there's too much emotional chaos happening within themselves? So if you're that steady or more emotionally calm parent, a child is going to gravitate to that and lead by example of how they can steady themselves too. A child is usually just going through that because they, at the end of the day, they have unresolved issues and it's 100% their responsibility. But if you're living in chaos too, they're like, I'm trying to distance myself from it because I don't know how to deal with it myself. And until sometimes that child is the one to lead like I was, where I had to do it myself and not wait for my mother to change. And other times it's the parent who's going to do that and lead by example. And the child is almost going to mirror them and be attracted back.
That is so good. That is so good. Oh, gosh. So the steadiness that a mom provides instead of being swirled away and just like you can see moms literally implode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see it. I have a private community where I get messages of like they're falling apart. It's sad.
Yeah.
They're falling apart. They're having nightmares, not able to sleep properly. But it comes down to saying, how are you going to pull yourself back up so this doesn't take over your life? You know me, I'm a strong believer in God. And one of the biggest tests in life are your children.
Yes.
The biggest test in life is your children. And so when this happens, we have to lean in and say, what lesson is God trying to teach me right now? I truly believe that. What is he trying to teach me? That means that he wants me to go through this right now to learn the new emotional language and why this is happening and how I can approach my child, to learn how to better steady myself, to learn that there's a purpose outside of me beyond my children. It's a lesson for you in so many ways versus saying I'm going to completely crumble and surrender to this versus surrender to God's plan.
Yes, that's beautiful. There's a lesson. There's a lesson. And so instead of freaking out, we can just quiet ourselves before God and say, teach me, show me. What do you want me to do differently? So I think that my generation of parents, we were the helicopter parents, honestly, in the worst way. We didn't want anything bad to happen. And so we made our children weak. We made them not resilient. We made them not emotionally strong. And so sometimes this is what we
Yeah,
get children who aren't emotionally able to handle hardship. So the moment there's a conflict, they're like, I don't know what to do.
or over coddle and gentle parenting and stuff. And I want to make it known that it's never too late. Even if you were that parent, it's not too late, because how you approach it now can still change the energy of that relationship, right? You practicing, even if you're like, I was the helicopter parent. I had no idea what I was doing, and I could see how that affected you. I'd love for you to be able to share a little bit more about how that was for you and just hear them. Instead of saying, I did the best that I can, and this and that. Even though I say that to parents, I know you did the best that you can. You don't go and repeat that to your child.
Yeah.
Because what that tells the child is, my excuse is bigger than your pain. My reasons are bigger than your hurt. And they clock out, they get defensive, they become avoidant of that. But the reality is, it's never too late. It's about saying, okay, how am I going to approach it now? Doesn't matter if your child is 14 or 40.
Exactly. So let's talk about that component. So once a mom is in this situation where a child has cut her off, step one is to calm down and say, Lord, what are you trying to grow in me? What do you want me to do? Because it starts with us. How am I going to change? What am I going to do different? So let's talk about some other things she can do. And it's all around listening and communication. Would you not agree?
Yeah, for sure. The first thing that I would say is, I actually have an exercise about this in my community, and it's really to notice what I call observation versus evaluation. And it's a concept that I learned when I was studying communication for so long. The reason why I actually studied communication for so long is because I was that angry child that was very aggressive in the way that I spoke. And eventually I had to learn to say there's another way to communicate. But there's observation versus evaluation, which means oftentimes we're projecting onto someone what we think is our observation, but it's almost now putting like you're being selfish. The person's going to get defensive. You're oh, you're being selfish. You're punishing me by cutting me off. That's not an observation. That's now becoming a predicament about them and their behavior. Even though what's underneath it, the actual observation, for example, is, you haven't spoken to me in 3 months. Where you both can agree that it's a fact. And it's like, once you start to notice that and say, okay, when I'm approaching it, or I want to make something known to the other person, how can I say what's actually a fact versus my opinion? So your opinion, for example, is, oh, you haven't spoken to me in 3 months. I think that's selfish. But you can't say you're selfish and expect them to understand what's happening underneath it, which brings me to feelings versus thoughts.
Okay.
Pretty much saying, a lot of the times we put the word I feel in front of a thought.
Okay.
And then we make it like, I feel like you're being selfish.
And
it's like, no, if you can add I think that instead of I feel, then it's a thought. I think that you're selfish. So instead, it's like, I feel, it's just an emotion. I feel hurt. I feel sad. I feel disappointed. I feel this. I feel, and whatever that emotion is, literally one sentence. And so that changes the way you can say, hey, I feel sad that we haven't spoken in 3 months. Is the person going to be as defensive as, I feel like you're selfish because you're not talking to me?
Oh, friend.
Something as simple as that can really change someone's response to you by coming from a place of facts and a real emotion feeling versus a predicament of their character.
Oh, boy, that is tricky though, right?
We're already teaching this. You're right, Pamela. That's why I teach it. Nobody does. In school, you're not taught any of this stuff. Anywhere, you're never taught this stuff. So you're navigating a society that's very, I feel that, I feel this. It's an indication of them. We're taught that in school. We're taught that everywhere. So it does take work. However, once you do it a few times and you start to build that, it's like, oh my goodness, this is changing all of my relationships, especially the defensiveness, right? Where someone says, hey, I don't like how you did this, or you hurt me when you said this. And your automatic response is to explain yourself, because if you can explain yourself, then they're going to see that your intention was not to hurt them. But the other person hears, my feelings don't matter. Their reason is bigger than that. So it's like, don't defend yourself. Ask questions. Just say, I'm sorry that I made you feel that way. Can you tell me a little bit more about how that made you feel? And when you open up that conversation, it allows you to be like, wow, I didn't even see it that way. Can I share my perspective on how I was approaching it? And then that opens up for that healthy dialogue.
I feel statements truly are gold. They're gold because they're not opinion. They're not perception. They're just like, I feel sad that we haven't talked in 3 months. And then you just wait.
And it's weird for someone to be like, I'm angry at you because you said that. Where if you're like, I think you're selfish.
Yeah.
And it's now they're on defense mode. Now there's no healthy conversations that's going to come out of that because you made allegations about their character when really underneath that is just your need to feel acknowledged that you're sad.
Hey mama, if your house feels too quiet and your heart feels too heavy after launching your child, I've created a guide just for you. It's called Journaling Through Transitional Grief, a gentle, faith-filled resource to help you process the deep emotions of letting go. Inside, you'll find 6 reflection questions that will help you name your feelings, invite God into the grief, and experience His comfort in the middle of change. Remember, transitional grief is only a season, and God is leading you toward peace, purpose, and joy. You can grab your free copy at the link in the show notes. Now, let's get back to our conversation. So, but I wonder if the child also has that same need.
You nailed it.
So let's talk about that.
Because it goes both ways, right? Underneath every feeling of that is an unmet need, a need for connection, a need to be seen, a need to be heard, a need to be acknowledged, a need for support. There's an underlying need under each one of these feelings. And if the parent pays a little bit attention of what is the underlying need, you're going to approach it based on that underlying need, not the surface words. So for example, even if they're like, oh, you're toxic. Well, let's not take it personally. Let's try and say, what's underneath that need? What do they need? Do they need to feel seen? Are they lacking connection? Do they feel like they need to be heard? Have I heard them? Do you see what I'm saying? When you start to understand that, I have an entire presentation in my community on this, so it makes a lot more sense. But that's what you approach it with, is everything on the surface is like we talked about, you're selfish, you're toxic. Parents do it, children do it. Everybody does that. Yeah. But instead of taking everything as a personal attack, it's wait, what do they need? What is the underlying need that they have not received? And how can I approach it in a way that I'm going to speak to that need versus my own personal defense?
So is it okay, say you're in a conflict with an adult child, is it okay to say, what do you need? Is it okay to be that direct?
Yes.
Okay.
And say, tell me one specific thing. One specific thing. What do you need?
Okay.
What could I do to help this? Is there one particular thing? But once again, no one is taught that. That's the biggest thing, Kamala. No one is taught how to express their needs. They'll say, for example, I need more space. What does that mean?
What's that mean?
I need more attention. What does that mean?
Yeah.
It's like it has to be specific. So if someone were to say, hey, I need more space, I will, no problem, I'll give you space. Are you okay if we maybe speak once a week? Does that give you enough space? It has to be specific. No one has been taught to express their needs because we don't even know how to do that. How are we going to ask someone else to express their needs if us ourselves have never been trained to say, what do you need? I can't tell you how many times I've asked people and say, what do you need? And they don't know. Yeah. They know what they don't want, but they have no idea how to articulate their needs. Nobody taught them that. They've been taught their feelings are, I'm good, I'm fine, I'm okay, I'm not okay. Yes. No one has ever used the words, oh, I'm disappointed, I'm feeling anxious, like not the same way. They don't know how to express some of those needs where it's like, I would love to just be able to get once a week phone call from you because that I need that from you because that's going to make me feel like I matter in your life.
Yes.
That's what I need. Yes. I need that. Do you know what I mean? So a lot of people don't know how to express that.
So I think there's some language around this idea of helping people feel safe together, right? I want my adult kids to feel safe when they're with me. Like we can talk about anything. And so what can that look like? What would a mom do to achieve that in a relationship?
That's a big question. I think it's a big question. I think it comes down to what we were talking in the beginning when in the emotional steadiness is because you cannot approach a conversation when you're anxious, in panic, feeling urgent,
or
angry.
defensive.
You can't approach a healthy conversation because the energy underneath all of that is going to be felt by the recipient, right? The person on the other side. Right. So the reality is that's why it still comes down to that emotional steadiness because then when you're emotionally steady, you're calmer. When you're calmer, your perception is different, right? Now it's your prefrontal cortex that's working, not your amygdala, that's fight or flight. And so you're more aware and conscious of how you're approaching it, which is going to be felt on the other side. you're clear. And so that's the first thing. And then from there, it's like, how can I understand their needs a little bit better before I make it about me? I want to go in and be able to have a healthier conversation over making sure that I'm right or I have to feel good. There's no ego. There's none of that involved.
That's good. That's good. So let's talk to the mom who has been cut off and now she's calmed herself. She's realizing there's some work I have to do. What is her first step? What is her first step to try to reconnect?
So I cover that exactly in the Reconnect Starter Kit. So that's
Good.
one. And it's honestly, sometimes it's as simple as, hey, I was thinking about you today. I love you. I hope you're having a great day. That's it. No full lifelong messages of explanations and stuff like that. Over time, the messages can be a little bit more intentional. For example, two examples. One could be an intentional apology. One intentional apology. Hey,
One.
not I'm apologizing for everything and anything, and now it's you're the villain of the story versus intentional. Hey, I remember how, and I'm going to use my example for me of my mom. I remembered how I forgot your birthday cake on March 5th. And I genuinely want to say, I'm so sorry. I can only imagine how unseen you felt.
Beautiful.
There's no explanations, though. And this is where the mistake happens, where sometimes I'm so sorry for what is going that happened. I was going through a traumatic experience with my husband and my family at the time, and I didn't know better. See how now it became about your reasoning?
Now it became about you. None
It's
of
just
that.
and that's usually how it starts. Now, some parents get responses literally right away to the point that they're like, I don't know what to do. They asked me, and I was like, what do I do? What do I do? And other parents are like, I sent 2 messages and it didn't work. No, this is what you have to do to slowly reprogram their nervous system and yours to say it's safe to open up that conversation. And some people could take 1 week, some people could take months, some people could take a year or 2. And that's just the reality of it, depending on how deep that pain runs for both of them.
So we don't over-apologize. We don't give all the reasons. Please state something like, I love you and I miss you. Period.
Yeah, like short, simple, no pressure touch points makes a big difference.
That's beautiful. Okay, as we're wrapping up today, Tania, I want you to speak to the mom who feels hopeless. What would you say to her?
The reason why someone typically feels hopeless is because they've lost their purpose in life outside of being a mother, in my opinion. And the one thing that I could say is if you're still breathing on earth, your purpose is still here, and spend your energy learning on how you can reconnect with your child, but even more so on who you are. What are you here for? Find that light again in your life, because all you can say is, I'm going to do what I can control in this situation, which is the outreaches, but I can't force them back. And I need to find my purpose. So the reason why people are helpless or depressed is because they've lost any light. They've attached, and here's a really interesting thing, they've attached their identity to being a mom. But like the very similar feeling, because they're like, yeah, I was a stay-at-home mom. That's fine. But at some point, whether you're estranged or not, you're going to be an empty nester. You're going to be an empty nester. And then what? Find something for you. It's like you feel a little bit excited about life again. You wake up excited. You feel inspired to do certain things. And that naturally will definitely pull you out of helplessness and that depression.
That's right. That's it. That's why I started my ministry to empty nest moms. After raising 5 kids, I'm like, what should I do now? And here we are. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for being here today. I love the hope that you provide. I love that it's all about understanding emotional intelligence and communicating differently. This is so good. I love your work. I want you to tell my listeners where they can find you and your program and your resources online.
Thanks. So Tania Khazaal is where you can find me. It's my website across social media, everywhere. You can pretty much Google me. And you could find all my programs there too. So the cancel culture is the #1. That's my bestseller. And that's really the new rules of family repair. So understanding how the language has changed, narcissism, trauma, toxic, all of that. And then the Reconnect Starter Kits. Okay, now that you understand that, how do I reach out and do those first steps? And what does that look like?
I love that. Listeners, go get her program because it's a good one. It is going to help you immensely. If today's episode stirred something in your heart, maybe grief, regret, confusion, or even a little hope, I just want you to pause and remind you of this. No relationship story is beyond God's reach. Here's your coaching tip of the week. In each episode, I will give you one actionable step to improve your life. Remember, you can't change everything, but you can take one step to be better. This week, I want you to sit with the Lord and ask Him, Lord, what do you want me to do? What do you want to heal in me? What do you want to change in me so that I can find my way back to my adult child? Remember this, healing in family relationships is often slow. Sometimes it begins with hard reflection, and sometimes it requires surrender. And sometimes the outcome isn't what we hope for, at least not yet. But friend, your story is not finished. If you're a mom carrying the ache of distance with an adult child, I pray this conversation gave you wisdom, compassion, and a clearer understanding of what healthy repair can look like. And if this episode encouraged you, would you take a moment to share it with another mom who may need it? That's one of the easiest ways to help hurting moms find hope. And until next time, keep trusting God with the ones you love the most. Remember, you've got this, and God's got you. Thank you so much for spending time with me on the Midlife Mama podcast. My hope is that you leave each episode feeling encouraged, grounded, and clearer about what you're feeling, what God may be stirring in you, and how to move forward in the season of the empty nest. Through these conversations, I'm not just sharing stories, I'm coaching you, helping you name what's happening beneath the surface, challenging the thoughts that keep you stuck, and take intentional steps toward peace and confidence as a midlife mom. If you're ready to go deeper and want personalized coaching support, I invite you to apply for coaching. Coaching is a focused one-on-one space where we work together to gain clarity, process emotions, and discern what God is calling you to in this next chapter. You'll find the application linked in the show notes, and let's stay connected. You can find me on Instagram at @PHinkelman, that's PHENKELMAN, or on Facebook at Pamela Hinkelman, Empty Nest Coach. You don't have to figure out this season alone, Mama. Support and direction are possible, and I'm here when you're ready.